welcome back to my channel. And if you are just passing through, welcome, a very special welcome. And if you enjoy content like this, please be sure to join the family by hitting that subscribe button. And of course, don't forget to hit that notification bell so that you don't miss any videos that are posted on here. Here we talk about a lot of different things. And again, if you enjoy content like the one that we were watching today, then you are in the right place. Let's get started. So in today's video, I'm basically gonna walk you through point A through Z of how I completed this picture frame. So I've been doing a few touch-ups and facelifts for my home, and I wanted a picture frame that was gonna fill up a wall. So if you remember this room, that's the little table that I painted from turquoise to black. So if you were wondering how I did that, there's gonna be a video right here that you can click into and you can watch that video. Once I painted that, I wanted something that was gonna go above it. Initially I had a mirror, but just because of how the space is set up, I didn't want something that was gonna have too much reflection. In that room I have about 5 large windows kind of looking into it, and a glass door that kind of brings in a lot of light. So I didn't want to put a mirror above that because it was just going to be just too much sunshine coming in, no pun intended, but a lot of light. It was going to be hitting that mirror and then hitting back in the room, and it was just going to be too bright for my liking. So I wanted something that was going to just kind of be there and like a statement piece. I didn't want something that was going to reflect too much light. Initially I had thought of doing something like these frames, which I had done for my husband's office. So one, they were too small for what I needed to do. I wanted something that was gonna fill that up a little bit more. The one I used in my husband's office were IKEA frames, and they had like a plastic film on the front, and they also were a bit reflective. Canvas paper has like a matte feel to it, so it's not going to reflect light back and forth. So it was just gonna be a statement piece, and that's exactly what I was going for. Another motivational portion of this was price. I went and I Googled some picture frames because I wanted something that was like very abstract. I wanted something bold. I wanted something simple. I wanted a lot, but I wasn't willing to pay the prices that I was seeing online, and they were like pretty steep, like in the 400 mark for one frame. I mean, one picture, one canvas. Some of them were framed, some of them were unframed, but for one canvas, for the size that I wanted to fit this aesthetic, would cost around like $400 for one. Mind you, because of what I needed 3 of the $400 frames. So you can imagine how that would add up. Google algorithm has not yet figured out that I'm married to a woman. Altogether, I spent under $150 in creating all these 3 frames. And I'm talking about the paint, the canvas, the glue that I didn't even end up using, the gold glitter, the tools needed, and the staple gun, like everything I needed, the miter saw, the miter box and the saw, the wood, everything came up to under $150. So I decided to tackle this by myself. So to start, I basically prepped the little area that I was gonna be working with. These are white floors and I have white curtains. I had to keep everything out of reach. Anything that like a piece of splatter can get a hold of, I put away. So the curtains, the floor, I made sure I covered that with like a blanket. And then I went ahead and I unwrapped the pieces. I had some water next to me, which was just plain tap water in a red cup that I had because I didn't want to make a mess, and I didn't want to have like this whole huge cleanup after trying to like do this. So to start, I went ahead and wet the canvas. This is just something that I learned. I was paying attention in my paint class at school, and that's the piece of paper that I put the paint on. You can get fancy and get like I think they're like $1 of those like artist things where you could like put paints, but I was only using one color and I didn't have to do any mixing. So I just went ahead and put it on any flat surface. If I had like a paper plate, I would have probably used that too. So to start, I didn't have any idea whatsoever. Like, it's not like I traced this and I had this plan of what I was doing. I was literally like, I'm gonna put it all on this canvas. So I started with little strokes. I had an idea of what I wanted. I knew for a fact that I wanted them to connect. I wanted the 3 frames to look like they have some kind of connection and not just standalone frames. So with that in mind, I just went ahead and just started painting. What I will recommend if you are doing this on your own is probably trace out what you want the frames to look like. That way you can just color it in. Those little strokes you see that I put there, I didn't want them to be too plain. After I did the couple of strokes, I realized that the canvas was just too large and I needed to either fill it with a lot of paint or I needed to find like something to make it look full. I definitely did play around with those strokes and just kept going. So once I finished that first painting, I put the other paintings side by side, and again, how I mentioned earlier, I wanted them to connect. I wanted them to look like they were like a puzzle piece, and so I put it next to it and I just extended what I had on the first canvas. Again, there was no sense of direction. It was just I wanted lines to connect. I wanted to look like abstract. I wanted it to kind of look like messy, like large brush strokes, kind of like what they sell to us for like thousands of dollars, really, but really coming from a place that known that I painted it. One of the things that I will say is that usually when I used to be in school, or like if I'm sitting in a meeting, especially now that things are virtual, I tend to doodle a lot. So I will either draw like squiggly lines and just abstract things. So I think I had that in mind when I was painting this. I didn't really have an idea. Like I didn't want to draw like a thing, like a cat, or like, you get what I'm saying? I didn't really want to draw. I wasn't really going for anything in particular, just lines that looked like they connected, something that looked abstract, and I wanted it to be black and white, and I wanted it to have some kind of glitter. So yeah, that was what I was going for. So I stopped so many times and I'm like, this looks terrible. Like there were times, especially when I put those little strokes right there on it, I was like, oh my God, this looks so terrible. I should probably stop now. It's just terrible. And it just goes to speak to how we tend to get in our heads sometimes when you're doing something and it just starts to go a little sideways, and like it's tempting to just give it all up. But painting this canvas really taught me that if you have a vision in mind and the steps may not necessarily correlate with the vision that you have in mind, see it through, because at the end of the day, it's either it's gonna be a really nice painting or a really nice project, or it's gonna be a really bad one. But at each step, you would have learned something that would make your next attempt a better one. So I'm glad I saw this through, because it's a painting that I have in my house. People are like, are really impressed, or they don't believe that I painted it or even created the frames for it, but I'm able to kind of have this painting and call it my own. So if this is just little words of encouragement, again, I'm no professional, and there are still many times that I look at the frame and I'm like, I could have used a little bit of work, but it's perfect to me, and that slight imperfection just tells the story on its own, and I enjoy having it. So that's kind of what that looked like when it was done. I took a step back several times when I was painting this to see areas that I could, I guess, improve upon, and at this point I thought I was content with it. So I went ahead and took some of that glitter that I bought. Again, everything will be linked down below. And I started to put that on the wet paint, and I immediately realized that this was like the wrong move. It wasn't a good idea. It didn't look good. It wasn't spreading right. And I was like, oh crap. Like I have just wasted my money and my time trying to do this thing. And at this point I'm like, I should have probably just bought it because all this time and energy that I'm putting into this, it doesn't feel worth it. But again, I'm of the mindset, at least with this project, I was very determined, and I was like, nothing's gonna stop me, because at the end of the day, if this turns out terrible, I just know how to do it better if I tackle it again next time. So keep going. And I kept going, and at this point I tried to like take off the glitter, because I was like, oh my gosh, this looks terrible. I hated that it was just clumped up in one corner and it wasn't really spread out evenly, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is not it. So I stopped working on the glitter, and then I put the frames upright and I stepped back, and I immediately realized that I could go over the painting that I did. So the next day I came back, I left it on the floor to dry, and I came back with the glitter. And this time I realized that the first time doing it with my bare hands didn't really help. So this time I came back with gloves and some glue. I used Mug Pod. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but I will link that below as well. And I just put them all over where I wanted the glitter to go, and then I came back and I just put those gold sparkles over the Mug Pod. I'm so glad that as it started to go sideways with the glitter, I kind of stopped, because I was getting a little bit discouraged and frustrated, because not only was it not giving what it was supposed to give, but like now it just looks a mess. So I put that as needed where I felt it would look right, and then I went ahead and stood those up. So that's kind of what they look like once the glitter was on it, and it was starting to come together a little better. And so I went back in with the black paint the next day after it was dry, and I just filled it in wherever it looked patchy, kind of anywhere that it was like a little bit gray, to make sure the blacks were like really solid. So here's a little side-by-side comparison of what it looked like the next day, and how it looked like when I went back in to fill in those missing pieces. So that's the video of how I painted the canvas, and just all the thoughts that were going through my head when I was painting it. Again, the reason why I ended up opting to paint this was because I wanted to save some money. This project ended up costing me a total of not even a total, under $150. Whereas like if I would have bought the pieces, I would have spent too much money on it. If you like content like the one that you just saw, please be sure to join the family by hitting that subscribe button so you can get notified. But I'm going to share with you in part 2 how I created the frame that went around the canvas, how I painted the canvas, and how I mounted this piece on the wall. And again, I'm going to give you a little bit of insight of the final product in great detail. See you in the next one. Bye.